Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. Fantastic show planned for you today. Steve Kim, Butter, Shemeka Michelle, Anthony Walker, Virgil Walker, Kevin Donahue, all will join me today and help me with my discussion today. And we have a lot of topics to cover, but we're going to start. We're going to start with the NBA. We're going to start with Bronny and LeBron James and what that all meant and what the NBA opening night meant and signified. And boy, do I have a terrific take on that. Before I unveil that take, I want you all to know the best thing you can do. If you love what we're doing here at Fearless, if you like your sports without the woke garbage from ESPN and corporate media, join the Fearless Mission movement. Go to fearlessmission.com and become a subscriber. Get a subscription to Fearless Mission. Use my promo code Fearless40 and you can save an additional $40 on your yearly subscription. It's the greatest thing you can do to support me, this network, this channel, and a point of view about the sports world and about the world at large that you actually agree with and aligns, hopefully, with the Bible. So join the Fearless Mission. Go to fearlessmission.com, become a subscriber, save $40 with my promo code Fearless40. And here's why you should do it, because no one starts a better fire, no one has a better conversation, point of view, and perspective on the sports world than yours truly. It's an honor to give it to you. Last night, let me go straight to the point. The WNBA is superior to the NBA. Let's look at the chat. Oh, here we go again. What is Whitlock's gone crazy? No, I haven't. I watched as much as I could of the Lakers and the Timberwolves. I've already forgotten who did the Celtics play? The Knicks. The Celtics played the Knicks and blew them out. I watched as much of that as I could. I watched the pregame show with Kenny, Charles, and Shaq and Ernie. I tried to take it in. Hey man, they've ruined this game. Butter, you seen the movie The Godfather?
Yes.
You know the guy. Don Corleone, when Sonny gets killed, he takes him over to who drives the hearse? The mortician. Takes him over to the mortician, and they wheel him in and they unveil Sonny after he's been shot up. Look at how they massacred my boy. Look at what they did to my boy. I don't want his mother to see him like this. That's how I felt last night. I am an NBA fan. That was my first love. Basketball. My father used to take me and my brother to ABA Pacer basketball games at the Indiana Fairground. Darnell Hillman and his afro, my favorite player. Good Lord, when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were going at it in the NBA, you couldn't pry me away from a TV. I loved Magic Johnson, and I loved watching him compete in the NBA. I love watching him take on Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan. Basketball has been my thing, my favorite sport. Yes, I know the most about football. Yes, football more aligns with my worldview or used to. But basketball was my thing. And look, this has been going on for years. But my goodness, they opened up the NBA season with 2 games and they shot 162 three-pointers. 162 three-pointers in 2 games. The Boston Celtics shot 61 three-pointers last night. Hey, I get the Steph Curry effect. I get the analytics. They've destroyed the game. And here's what the WNBA has over the NBA. If you really watch this game, and if you're not just following for your fantasy sports, if you're not just following for the point spread, if you love this game and just want to watch for the competition, the competition's not there. The NBA players do not care. You can see it in their style of play. Those two games were competitive all-star games. Everybody's an all-star in the NBA because everybody's making a ton of money. Everybody's walking around like they're the king of New York, the king of whatever city they're in. They're all making millions and millions of dollars, so they're all all-stars in their own mind. They've all, they're all little individual businesses and corporations. They don't care about the game. They don't care about the competition. And you can see it, you can sense it, you can feel it if you watch the game. And if you have, again, if you're old like me, and if you remember what the game used to be about, what it used to look like. Everybody knows this. And so I'm going to show you the clip. I'm going to replay you the clip because I want you to understand. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know exactly what I'm saying here. And I know how crazy it sounds, but it's the truth. But I just want to give you, I haven't lost my mind. I haven't forgotten what I've said earlier in the week. I want to show you that I haven't gone crazy. My memory hasn't gone fuzzy. I want to show you a scene from Game 5 of the WNBA Finals and how trash this 50-second clip is. And I'm telling you, it's better than the NBA. Play the WNBA Game 5 clip.
Time we've seen that. The first was in the first quarter. McBride understanding she has the mismatch, going to multiple moves to get around her.
Big bucket from McBride. Sobley, center of the lane. Can't finish. Gets it back. In the corner. Thornton. No. And New York 0 for 13 from 3 in Game 5. 1 point Liberty lead. Williams into the paint. Flips it up. Wanted a whistle. Did not get it. Liberty with a little pace. Semi-transition. Jones trying to grab it. Trapped in the corner. New York could take a timeout if they need to. Instead, Jones throws it away. Don't want to give away possessions in a game like this as Williams now steps out.
That's the WNBA. I know how bad it is. I know how unskilled the players are. It's better than the NBA. Because those women actually care. They're actually competing against each other. It's about competition. We want to see people compete. These guys are not competing. Last night was this big, LeBron James and Bronny, they made history. We're flying Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. in to sit courtside to watch this amazing history. Bronny and LeBron are going to take the court together. This is magic. I think I saw a tweet from Emmanuel Acho. He had chills watching LeBron and Bronny play, and he was moved to emotion. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're making a mockery of the game. This is the circus. This isn't about competition. This is about LeBron's ego, and everybody's in on it. And so it's hard for anybody to tell the truth. Hats off. TNT had a big meeting clearly before the game, and they decided, hey, Chuck, we're not going to ask you to destroy your brand. Go ahead and tell the truth here. Kenny, we are going to ask you to destroy your brand. You defend this Bronny-LeBron deal. And Shaq, don't say anything. Shaq, just sit over in the corner and don't say anything. And Shaq probably told him, I'm not in this. I'm not getting in it. LeBron's a Freemason just like I am. I can't speak against him. That's probably what Shaq said. But let's play the clip of the guys from the inside the NBA crew talking about this circus. This is before the game. Talking about this circus that the Lakers put on and LeBron James and Bronny put on. And you're wondering why. With these types of gimmicks, I'm sitting here saying the WNBA is superior to the NBA. And it is. Here's Barkley and Kenny and Shaq saying nothing.
And Ken Griffey Jr. and his father played on the same team together.
And they're going to be there tonight.
Hit back-to-back home runs in the same game once upon a time.
In the same game?
Yeah, and
wow.
As teammates, and they're going to be there.
And so Bronny's getting in the game tonight. And this is a Nike commercial waiting to happen. So they're not. Ken Griffey's not flying all the way from Florida to L.A. not to see Bronny play.
Yeah.
But I will say this: Bronny's a prospect. Number one, I'm glad he's healthy. I think he should be in the G League. He's not ready to play in the NBA right now.
And it's expected he will spend.
And he should be in the G League because he's not ready to play in the NBA first and foremost. But secondly, there's going to be some guys coming for his head. And he's not ready because he's really a tweener. He's a point guard, two guard. His probably best attribute right now is being a defender. But I think to take the pressure off him and let him get better as a player, he should be in the G League.
And if he played last year, he only played a handful of college games.
And coming back from the hard issue.
That is the reason why he's not ready.
Yeah.
I wish we had played the beginning of Kenny's statements where he's defending him, he says he was a McDonald's All-American, so of course he was drafted. Kenny, they handed him the McDonald's All-American. He didn't earn it. But again, Kenny's just playing a role. I'm going to defend Kenny. He was given a script that he had to follow, and he followed it. Hats off to Kenny. Hats off to Charles for not breaking character and staying true to his brand. And hats off to Shaq by saying, my name's Bennett, and I ain't in it. I'm a Freemason. LeBron's a Freemason. We don't talk bad about each other. I'm going to stay out of it. Hats off, Shaq. But this gimmick that we were witnessed last night, on top of just how rancid and uncompetitive the play was. Don't tell, Antonio Davis or Anthony Davis had 36 points and 16 rebounds. He was magical. Anybody can put up numbers, and I'm not saying he's not a talented player, but anybody can put up numbers in this uncompetitive league. Again, go look at the stats they put up during the All-Star game. Everybody's putting up 20, 30, 40 points because there's no defense play, no one cares, and they just stand around and jack up threes. There were 162 threes shot in 2 games last night. This is the showcase. Adam Silver has no qualifications for his job. This game is a joke. They should be the same way they said, hey, man, we got Michael Jordan and we're going to change up the rules a little bit to showcase Michael Jordan. Somebody has to recognize, hey, this hot garbage we're putting on the court and everybody just jacking up threes. You know what? We got to move the three-point line back, and if we have to widen the court to make three-pointers from the baseline harder so we can extend that out, and we certainly need to move the three-point line back. This three-point shoot, it's a mockery. But they're all drowning in money, in millions upon millions of dollars, so they don't fix anything. They don't improve anything. They've destroyed the game. I'm telling you, I'm Don Corleone. Look what they've done to my boy. They massacred my boy. I don't want to see it. I don't want my son. I don't want my grandson. I don't want my aunties and nieces and uncles. I don't want my nieces and nephews seeing this. I don't want anybody seeing this. It's garbage. It's worse than the WNBA because you know what? In the WNBA, they actually compete against each other, and they haven't allowed some egomaniac to throw his son into the script. This is an abomination. And again, they can't talk about it. They can't have an honest discussion about it. Like, That's hot garbage. Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal and Kenny Smith sitting around watching a bunch of guys just throw up three-pointer after three-pointer. They're sitting there going, holy cow, and they're making $20 and $30 and $40 million a year. Trust me, Charles and Shaq and these guys are like, this is unbelievable. You got bench players, guys that don't matter, making $10 million a year. The WNBA is superior, and there's enough pressure on the WNBA over social media and from people like myself that the WNBA is actually pivoting away from their Caitlin Clark hate and insanity. They realize that they've nearly blown it with Caitlin Clark. I want to show you, this is Cheryl Reeve, the coach of the Minnesota Lynx, who's a very good coach. I'm haven't been the hugest fan of hers because didn't like the way she welcomed Caitlin Clark to the league. She was part of the hate group, the part of the Alphabet Mafia hate group that couldn't stand Caitlin Clark. Cheryl Reeve was the Olympic coach that participated in keeping Caitlin Clark off the Olympic team. But she's starting to wisen up because the market has spoken and fans are speaking, and she knows what a clown she looked and sounded like taking a dump on the one person who made the WNBA relevant. And so yesterday, Cheryl Reeve started backpedaling. Actually, her backpedaling probably began a month and a half ago, but now she's in full backpedal. And she's acknowledging what no one else or everyone else was reluctant to acknowledge, that Caitlin Clark has been carrying this league, or carried this league this past season. I want to play Cheryl Reeve, I believe. Yeah, this is SOT number 2. Yeah, Cheryl Reeve. I want to play this, and then I want to show you what she was saying earlier in the year. Here's Cheryl Reeve.
The evolution of the league into the space that it got into in terms of the popularity, even before the season started, when Caitlin Clark announced that she was going to enter the draft, I remember, obviously I'm connected to the business side, and the wave of enthusiasm that came from a player that wasn't even going to play for the Lynx. And, we certainly knew some of the other players that were going to be in this draft. So there was a lot of excitement and momentum for the WNBA, but to see it actually translating business-wise across the league, whatever the reasons were, there's a lot of, as we all know, there's one really big reason, and then there's a lot of other reasons why.
That's honesty. There's a really big reason why the WNBA ascended in popularity. And then there's a bunch of little things. And so that's Cheryl Reeve saying, hey, that stupid Wall Street Journal article from last week with Asia Wilson and Angel Reese on the cover of the story and promoted like they did this, that's a joke. Caitlin Clark did this, and Cheryl Reeve has come to grips with it. Let's walk you back to Cheryl Reeve early in the year when she was irate that all the attention was on Caitlin Clark, and she was putting out tweets. Also in action tonight, the Minnesota Lynx versus the Chicago Sky, 7 p.m. Central Time. Though fans won't be able to watch, Lynx fans can go to the Lynx app to follow along via play-by-play, blah, blah, blah. Hashtag 12 teams, hashtag the W. It's more than one player. That's her early in the year. Then she had this random Twitter user, number 1. Is there a reason why it's not being shown? Random Twitter user number 2, because they only care about Caitlin Clark. Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve, that part. See, the insanity is starting to lift in the WNBA. Cheryl Reeve is the best coach in the WNBA. She's won 4 championships. Should have won a 5th the other night, but they cheated her out of it. They cheated the Lynx out of that, and we saw. And I talked about it. And again, I know that, hey, they rigged that final deal, and I didn't like it. I know how bad the play was. I know how bad Game 5 was. It's still better than the NBA because they actually care. And they care enough that even Cheryl Reeve is pivoting off of her animus towards Caitlin Clark. She's backpedaling better than Deion Sanders. And the rest of the league needs to hop on board because they realize if they keep up with this insanity towards Caitlin Clark, they run the risk, now that the players have opted out of the collective bargaining agreement, now that the players are constantly talking about, hey, we want to be paid more money, and we want a bigger piece of the pie. They know that someone could come dangling a prize in front of Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark and a handful of other girls could walk away from the WNBA, start their own league, and build a better business than what the 2 idiots, Adam Silver and Kathy Engelbert, have built. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA. These are 2 of the worst run leagues in the history of sport. The WNBA is the worst run league in the history of sports, and the NBA is surviving off of what David Stern built. Adam Silver, in a properly functioning market, in a properly functioning economy, and in a properly functioning work environment built on merit, he would be fired a long time ago for letting this game rot and letting these entitled players make a complete mockery out of sports that have a long history in America. They have destroyed merit. The men have. And that's why the women have an opportunity, because they at least care. Do men care at this point? And I'm talking to all of you. Do we care? Some of you are so cowardly, you'd rather vote for Kamala Harris than do what you really feel. You don't want to deal with your wife, your girlfriend. You don't want to deal with the people at work. You don't want anyone questioning, oh, God, are you racist? You voted for Donald Trump. That's how cowardly we are as men. We don't care. Do you understand the larger point here? Because you can sit here and wag the finger at the NBA players and say, look at LeBron and look what they've done to the game. This is what men have done throughout American society. We don't care, and then we complain about the results. We're afraid to stand up for what is right. We're afraid to defend merit. Oh, God, they'll call me racist. They'll call me an Uncle Tom. Oh, my wife or girlfriend will be mad at me. She's nothing without you. She can't make it without you. Again, look at the WNBA as an example. And I'm telling you, it's superior to the NBA because at least they care. But do you think they could make it without men? Without the charity, the subsidy of men? I just can't. We've been so emasculated and so bullied for no reason. But what is the Wizard of Oz, and you find out that the guy behind the drape is nothing? That's what this whole feminist, BLM, alphabet mafia, they're the Wizard of Oz. They're behind a little drape. They're nothing. And we're running around all scared. Oh, God, they're going to call me a sexist pig if I say what I really think. Oh, I'll be called a racist. I'll be called a sellout. Oh, and if they really, really get mad at me, they'll call me an anti-Semite. And oh, I can't be called an anti-Semite. It's happened to me. It's all over my Wikipedia page. I'm still here. They've called me every name in the book. Uncle Tom, coon, anti-Semite, the black face of white supremacy. So when I look at the NBA, I'm just reminded of the cowardice of men and the fact that we quit and we don't care. We're fat and happy. Hey, we're making good money. Everybody's rich in the NBA. We can throw garbage out here and people will accept it. That's what men have been doing. And that's why our country's in the mess it is in. Just wanted to get that off my chest. I think, did I cover everything? Oh, well, I'm going to save that for Steve Kim. On the other side, they came out with a list of the top 10 most marketable athletes. And my girl Caitlin Clark was number 4th, and I completely disagree with it. Did I say number 4th?
Yeah.
Number 4.
4th.
She's not number 4th. She was 4th on the list. We'll talk about that with Steve Kim and some other things popping in the sports world. Before we get to Steve Kim, guys, I want to tell you about Patriot Mobile, the phone service that I use and you should be using. Hey, have you stuck your finger out in the air, guys? And this is why you should all be getting courage. Stick your finger in the air. The wind is actually blowing our direction. People are coming out of the closet like, hey, man, I like Trump. I like our Constitution. I like conservative values. You know what? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, and I'm not going to hide it. The wind is blowing our direction. And to further that, that's why you need to hop on board with a company like Patriot Mobile. They share our values. They are an American-based wireless provider that uses an American customer service team, protects the Constitution, protects the Second Amendment, fights for our rights. They're America first. They got a 100% U.S.-based customer service team. I've been using Patriot Mobile for more than a year. It's great. Haven't had any problem with it. We have to continue this momentum that we have. And I know everybody's pouring everything into the election, and I get it, and I understand why. I went out and voted. I get it. But we have to do these other things as well, and that's supporting businesses like Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Jason, patriotmobile.com, or you can call 972-PATRIOT right now. Get a free month when you use the offer code Jason. Don't get fooled by other providers pretending to share your values or have the same coverage. They don't and they can't. Join me, switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile provider, Patriot Mobile. That's patriotmobile.com/Jason, or call 972-PATRIOT for your free month of service today. Korean Cosell, Steve Kim, X. Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, all the rest of them that played in that game, even on the Minnesota Lynx, all of them. They got a taste, a tiny, tiny taste of the kind of pressure that Caitlin Clark has been under all season. The kind of pressure and spotlight that Caitlin Clark has been under all season. And what happened? They fold. They get a tiny bit of the attention. That spotlight came. Game 5, big game. People are interested. The WNBA finally has some attention. Sabrina Ionescu goes 1 of 19 from the field. It's one of the worst performances we've ever seen, if not the worst performance we've ever seen from a so-called elite athlete in a championship game performance. Have we ever? Think it through. Help me out. Hop in the chat, hop in the comments. Tell me where we've ever seen a so-called Olympian, elite, someone considered for face of the league, all on television commercials everywhere. Oh, she's a star. She's a legend. If things were right, if the world wasn't so sexist, she would be She would be Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, 모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Listen that I'm back just to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Steve Kim, I'm ready for you to hop in this conversation. I'm telling you, I watched opening night of the NBA, and I figured out, I finally put my total finger on why I'm so high on the WNBA over the NBA. And I know the WNBA play is really bad. But at least they care, Steve. At least the women care. I'm telling you, I watched that garbage last night. 162 three-pointers in 2 games. They play a style of play. They don't care. They don't care about entertaining the fans. They don't care about competing. Everybody's getting paid. Jack up threes. And LeBron, bring your little baby boy to work today, and we'll throw him out on the court, and everybody act like it's a big deal. WNBA. I got them on the heels of the NBA. At least they care. Your thoughts?
I will give you credit, Whitlock. You stand by your women. You really do. But this is a question of passion versus proficiency, because your general point, I think, is spot on. I mean, look, I know guys are injured and certain guys are always injured, but when you have load management going on in the first few games, if not weeks of the season, that is an issue. In an era, get this, in an era where they fly private, they never have to wait for their luggage to be picked up, basically. They get driven to 5-star hotels. They don't even play that many back-to-back games anymore. The 4 games in 5 nights, which used to be a staple of the NBA, I think that's been legislated out. I remember a couple months ago, Michael Thompson on the local ESPN affiliate talking about his rookie year early in his NBA run as the #1 pick. Did you know those guys not only had to fly commercial, they had to wash their own uniforms after the games? They would literally have to go into their hotel rooms, get a little soap, get the bathtub, and soak their uniform, and then hang dry it, and then off to the game they went. So when I hear these guys talking about the wear and tear, it's ridiculous. And Jason, I'm like you. Growing up in the 80s, you can make an argument that the NBA, because the Lakers were the winningest team that I chose to root for, was my favorite sport. And I remember every year, right around late September, early October, training camp would start. Lakers would have their camp at Loyola Marymount or Hawaii. And then the NBA would have what eventually called the McDonald's Cup. A high-profile NBA team would go to Europe and play a game. It'd be on TNT or TBS, and it was exciting. I'd watch all of it. So last night, fast forward to 2024, after the conclusion of the thrilling What in the Name of Sam Houston Florida International game, I flipped over to the Laker game out of curiosity. Jason, I didn't last as long as Michael Spinks against Mike Tyson. I think in about 90 seconds, I said, okay, I tried. We'll talk about Bronny. I'll watch the highlights. What they have done to this league, and Jason, a lot of people will give you a lot of reasons why we are at this point. And they'll talk about LeBron. They'll talk about Adam Silver. But I think one of the biggest culprits is Greg Popovich. When he started making load management acceptable and a part of every team's game plan, with no respect for the fans, and then Popovich waving or wagging the finger politically at people, I think that's had a pretty good amount to do with guys like me saying, okay, I'm out.
Yeah, he did that. He had that cast of veteran guys, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili. Tony Parker was still kind of in his prime. But you're right. He did start it. I can't give him full blame. I wouldn't say he's most responsible, but he's considered the best coach in the NBA, and he's definitely a big part of it. But I just want to know, this whole three-pointer thing, watching guys jack up three-pointers, you can't tell me that the lack of diversity in playing style. The Celtics and the Lakers had unique playing styles. Magic Johnson was going to play with a lot of pace, and then if they couldn't get the fast break going, couldn't get an early bucket, they'd throw it into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. the Celtics played a half-court game with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, and they had decent guards, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge. The Pistons were sort of a hybrid. They were going to kill you with defense and a bunch of athletes that could defend virtually any position. There was unique styles of play. There was contrast. Everybody now just stands around the three-point line and jacks up threes, and I'm supposed to be entertained by this. I'm not. I'm just not. Does anybody have a low post game? Does anybody? I know Anthony Davis dunks a lot, but is there a Kevin McHale in this league? Is there a Buck Williams in this league? Is there a Bernard King, a Wayman Tisdale? Is there any? I just don't see it, and they're all making so much money, and it's all so easy, and all the resistance has been removed. I just don't think the players just don't care that much. That looked like an overblown all-star game to me, both of those games. And I just didn't have much interest, and the 3 minutes that LeBron and Bronny were on the court were a joke to me. Steve, I want to play this clip of, and again, this is this make-believe world we've built throughout sports where people can just create their own narrative. LeBron James, after the game last night, said that everybody was rooting against him his rookie year. And I'm like, what is he talking about? Play the clip.
Hey, LeBron. Do you remember what it felt like in that moment, your NBA debut, and what Bronny was feeling tonight? And can you explain that feeling?
Yeah, I definitely remember that moment. It was very stressful. It was very stressful for me. Didn't get much sleep the night before. Didn't get much sleep during my pregame nap. I was extremely nervous. I felt the world of the game of basketball on my shoulders, and I felt like kind of pretty much everyone besides my family and friends wanted me to fail, so and I just kind of channeled that in. I kind of was just very quiet the day of the game, and all the way up until the ball went went up in the air for the tip ball, I was nervous. My stomach was turning, whatever the case may be. So but once the game started, I guess the rest is history. You can kind of go back and rewatch the game if you want to.
Everybody was rooting against LeBron. Really? A high school kid that was there to save the league? I remember it just the opposite. Everybody was rooting for LeBron.
Jason, first of all, I want to point one thing out. I will not let the slander of Dennis Johnson go unnoticed here. He's a Hall of Famer, and Danny Ainge was a damn good two guard. So shout out to a really good
yes, he was.
backcourt there in Boston. Jason, I remember the first time I ever heard of LeBron James. I was waiting for a flight to go to Philadelphia. Doug Fisher and I had just started Max Boxing. We were going to do a day trip to go see Bernard Hopkins in preparation for his fight against Felix Trinidad. We got real good access. We were tight with the camp. And for years, I was a subscriber to perhaps the most influential basketball magazine of that era, Slam. And so I took it on my flight, and I'm flipping through it. And this is probably July of 2001. So this is after his sophomore year. And they wrote a little piece. It wasn't a huge article. He didn't make the cover. But they talked about this young kid out of Akron, Ohio. And I give Slam Magazine a lot of credit. They said this will be one of the greatest players ever and maybe one of the greatest prospects of all time, LeBron James. And I still recall the legend beginning right around that time because the number one player that year was a guy by the name of Lenny Cook with an E. Everyone thought he was going to be the presumptive next great one. And then at the ABCD Adidas camp that year, and I think it was in New Jersey, that this guy out of Akron, Ohio took over the camp, and everybody knew that's the guy. And that's when it began. And it was so hyped, Jason, if you remember, ESPN was showing his high school games, not highlights. They were literally broadcasting his high school games. So this whole notion that somehow he's this Horatio Alger story that came out of nowhere, like it's Fernando Valenzuela in 1981. Again, it's another false narrative. And what's maddening about it is He's the one creating it, and the media members just nod along like sheep.
Charles Barkley nailed it last night that what last night was a Nike commercial. That's why the Griffies were flown in. Barkley absolutely nailed it. And Nike did have a commercial, LeBron hazing Bronny. Let's play that ad.
All right, bet. I got you. Yo. Come on. Hey, Rook. Better not be late.
Yo, are you serious? Come on, man.
Hey, clean up my driveway. It's a mess.
Yo, you're too old for this. What's going on, bruh? Come on. You way too old for this, man. Yo, Bryce, where your keys at?
It's cute ad, puts a little smile on my face, but it's a gimmick, man. It's real world basketball edition. This is reality TV manipulated. It's desperate fathers and sons, housewives, or what, I don't know what. Your thoughts?
Jason, doesn't Nike always put out like the shirts with the swoosh and a slogan like "Witness" or "Her Story"?
Yeah.
This one here, instead of "earned, not given," should say "given, not earned." I don't really know. Okay, so we did this thing. It happened on opening night. We gave a G League caliber player at best minutes. Now what? Now it's just another 81 games of a slog. Jason, I've told you this before. There was a time, specifically during, I would say even past Magic, during the social media era, when Kobe Bryant was at his absolute apex, and perhaps even during the Shaq Kobe era, the Lakers were the most unifying force in our city in sports because they were winning titles. As popular as the Dodgers were for a long time, they did not win a World Series from '88 to the COVID season. Rams and Raiders had moved on. Hockey is hockey. So I always vividly recall that right around late April, early May, when the playoffs would begin and the Lakers would make their march, one thing that was ubiquitous in our city as you're driving around were car flags. Remember those things? People would attach them on their window, and it was almost like the spring bloom of purple and gold. And you'd see them all around the city, and no matter what cultural or racial or differences we had as a city, we loved our Lakers. Jason, I can tell you this right now as someone who's still right in the heart of the city, not too far from the crypto.com center. Nobody cares. There's an apathy towards this team that I have never felt in all my years as a sports fan.
They got no one to blame but themselves. Steve, I want to move on to similar topic, but there's been a list of pro sports most marketable athletes, the 10 most marketable athletes. And Caitlin Clark is fourth on this list. Simone Biles is at the top of the list. Some soccer player that I've never heard of, I apologize to you soccer fans out there, Vinicius Jr. is number 2. I don't know, what happened to Messi? What happened to Ronaldo? What happened to Pele? Is Pele dead? LeBron James is number 3. Caitlin Clark 4. Lionel Messi is 5. Who is Rebecca Andre? Is that the rugby player? Is that the Mbappe? I think it's Mbappe, another soccer player. No, I think the rugby player is Alona Meyer, perhaps, at number 8. Ronaldo, number 9. And Katie Ledecky, number 10. First of all, I this whole list, how many women? Andreas is a Brazilian gymnast. How many women are on this list? 2, 3, 5? Half the list is women? Yeah. Biles, Clark, Rebecca, the rugby player. Is this list legitimate? I mean, what is this? Where's Lamar Jackson? Where's anybody else I heard? What do you think? Your thoughts?
It's a DEI list. I mean, let's be honest. With all due respect to Simone Biles, brilliant athlete, maybe the greatest gymnast ever, but the last I checked, individuals that compete in Olympic sports are incredibly popular during the Olympics. So for once every 4 years, they're very popular. Maybe Usain Bolt probably broke the mold. Maybe track and field because they have meets all over. Look, I am not a soccer fan. Don't care. It's just not for me. But I know that Messi and that other guy, Ronaldo, I realize how popular they are 365 days out of the year. Okay? So I know who they are. Some of those other people I've literally never heard of. And you're right, Jason. Anytime there's a franchise NFL quarterback that's playing at an elite level, by default, they automatically in the top 10, especially if they go deep
Patrick
into the
Mahomes
playoffs.
isn't on that list.
Yeah, so again, this seems to be like the only thing they're missing is an LGBTQ person to round it out. By the way, no Asians. Come on, like aren't we still people of color? So that list, it is. Here's the problem with a lot of these lists. The people making it do not have the fortitude or the guts to be honest. They're trying to make everybody happy. And when you do that, you lose one thing: honesty.
I get that Simone Biles is an Olympian, but she quit in the Olympics. She quit in the Olympics. And I know that doesn't count because she's a little black woman and she claimed mental health issues or whatever, and so it's all thrown out the window. But you can't.
That was 2 Olympics ago.
Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson's not on. Excuse me.
Well, that was 2 Olympics ago. Wasn't that in 2021 when she did that?
She quit.
She did.
Steph Curry's not on this list. Steph Curry's not on. I mean, I don't. But more than anything, the reason I brought it up is because Caitlin Clark should be higher than 4th. But maybe I'm wrong. Butter, you got to.
I don't know why Russell Wilson's not on there.
Oh God, there we go.
Butter must have something to do. He's trying to get in the butter box. See, you're not going to outsmart me. You're not going to outsmart me.
I mean, what kind of list would not have him on it? You know what I mean?
Good.
That's intentional. That's flopping. He's flopping.
I want to stick around. I want to stick around. I like this convo.
Yeah.
Keep me in the game.
That's a flop. He's trying to draw a foul. Not going to happen. I'm going to move on to the NFL, Steve. And, the NFL is going crazy right now. Luke is wondering why Kadarius Toney's not on the list. Isn't that the wide receiver that got hurt for the Chiefs or so? I can't remember. I want to move on. The NFL is going crazy. It's almost turned into the NBA in terms of trades and midseason moves and people trying to acquire talent. The Chiefs have traded for DeAndre Hopkins. He's leaving us here in Tennessee, or where is DeAndre Hopkins? Where was he? He's headed to the Chiefs.
Yes, Tennessee.
Yeah, he's here in Tennessee. I thought I saw him pouting on the sidelines this past weekend. And so I'm not surprised that he's being moved to the Chiefs. Steve, do you like this move? Is this going to help the Chiefs?
Well, I like this move from Hopkins. I mean, he gets to go from Will Levis to Mahomes. Look,
Mason Rudolph, actually.
If Hopkins is still the guy that I think he might be, he's no longer what I'd call sensational, spectacular, but what he is a professional and solid. I looked up the numbers. Still had over 1,000 yards last season with 7 touchdowns with that quarterback situation. Now with the expertise of Andy Reid and the skill level of Mahomes, he could still be a very, very productive guy. The one thing I've always liked about Nuke is that he's a craftsman, great route runner, very precise in what he does. And look, he's looking to cap off I don't know if it's been a Hall of Fame career, but from about 2014 to 2020, he was very much an elite receiver with great production. And if he can get a ring, if he cares about things like the Hall of Fame, these type of variables do help him. I think it's a very good move for Kansas City because, quite frankly, they are really thinned out at that wide receiver spot.
Cooper Rush was out there and available, according to all the rumors. that's where I think some people will be like, hey, man, if you're going to make a move, go get Cooper Rush. Probably would have, I think they gave up a 5th round. It could be a 4th round to get Hopkins. Probably would have cost a 2nd round, or who knows what it would cost to get Cooper Rush. You're a tiny bit disappointed that, chasing a three-peat, that they didn't go out and get Cooper Rush, someone in the prime of their career?
Yeah, I mean, again, you said it best. What is the price? The difference is that Cooper Kupp does not have the mileage on the odometer. So the Rams are thinking, well, wait a minute. We're not giving you this guy for a mid-round pick. We want something within the 1st round or 2. So cost certainly may have been an issue. The great thing about Kupp is that I know when he came into the league, because he was a white guy, everyone assumed he's your slot receiver. They put him into that Wes Welker Edelman box. One of the great things about him, he can literally line up at any spot outside, whether it's in the slot, all the way outside. He can play the X, he can play the Y, and he will be effective, and he has a full route tree. And yeah, he has that deceptive speed. I went there, and he's like a coach on the field. But the issue is, again, there is a downside, though. There's an injury issue. He has not been healthy the last year or 2. So maybe if you're Kansas City, you're thinking, okay, Hopkins is a little bit cheaper, and even though he's older, he might be more durable at this stage of their careers.
Yeah, I'm satisfied, thinks it'll help. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins helps him down the field, but they don't throw downfield all that much. So he'll catch a lot of intermediate routes, and it's a good move. They had to do something. They did it. DeAndre Hopkins, again, he certainly was here pouting, and I'm not surprised he was traded. Finally, Steve, there's a monster rumor out there, and this rumor's kind of wild considering who's playing on Thursday night, that the Vikings would like to perhaps move on from Sam Darnold and acquire Matt Stafford. That's a wild rumor. The Vikings are 5-1. I actually agree with the rumor, though. I don't want to put it on the Vikings. It's just a rumor. If I'm the Vikings, with their personnel, with Justin Jefferson, with the way their defense played other than against the Lions, I would try to upgrade at quarterback. And that's not a shot at Sam Darnold, but I just don't think Sam Darnold is that guy. Go out and get you a proven veteran, guy still with one of the best arms in the league, and a Matt Stafford. What do you make of the rumors that the Vikings would like to upgrade at the QB position this year?
Boy, life comes at you fast. When Darnold gets off to his hot start, it becomes MVP talk, right? Late September MVP talk. Then it becomes, hey, at least he's in the comeback player of the year discussion. They lose one game and he's trade bait. Okay, now, Jason, I get what you're saying about Stafford. Elite arm talent. If you protect him, he can still deliver the leather. Here's the issue, though. Can we rewind a little bit to about April or May? You do remember they drafted a first-round quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. So I thought Darnold was the perfect bridge quarterback. You know what you have. You can get a serviceable year out of him. And you have that Brian Flores defense, which has been difficult. You might even get a playoff spot, right, in a very tough division. Darnold moves on to his next team. You hand off the baton to your first-round draft choice. What if you make this trade and then Stafford lights it up? And you're like, wait a minute. That's our quarterback. He has 3-4. What do you do with McCarthy? Do you just say, okay, we have 2 quarterbacks now? Keep that in mind. They drafted a high investment into a number 1 pick in J.J. McCarthy.
I'm sorry for the analogy, but Steve, that's like, hey, man, what do you do if you acquire J-Lo and she turns out to be the perfect girlfriend? And do you complain that like, oh, now I got the perfect girlfriend. She's a little worn. There's tread on the tires or tread off the tires. The odometer's a little heavy, but she's turned into the perfect girlfriend. Do you complain or do you celebrate? That Matt Stafford coming to the Vikings and playing well, that's a good problem. That's a bridge I would love to cross. And
really?
No.
Really?
No, you end up what the Titans did with Ryan Tannehill.
Hold on. Let me call Ben Affleck.
Stafford's not Ryan Tannehill. He just compared Stafford to Ryan Tannehill.
I'm saying the same scenario. You'd have the same scenario. Stafford's great with McVay, and in that system, he's not coming to Minnesota and being this big.
He was great in Detroit with nothing.
Ultimately, where did he win his Super Bowl?
I get it. But
Okay.
he's a super talent. Ryan Tannehill was never a super talent.
That's what happened to the Titans. Ryan Tannehill outplayed that contract. They got into a situation where he won. They went to the championship game that year. Bought in 3-4 years later.
You're talking to the one guy that never bought into Ryan Tannehill, though. I was always like,
that's what Matt Stafford would do if he went to the Vikings.
He's won a Super Bowl with the Rams.
That's just my opinion.
Get the butter box, Justin. Thank you. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, ask Ben Affleck
Go ahead, Steve.
about that. Let me call Ben Affleck. He tried that couple times with old J-Lo. It didn't work, okay? So, no, that's not applicable. The other thing is, again, I think Butter makes a point, though. I don't know if Stafford wants to go to a new team right in the middle of the year, have to learn a whole new system. I don't know. And by the way, need I remind you, Stafford in Detroit had a guy by the name of Megatron, Calvin Johnson. He wasn't completely by himself out there in Motown.
Definitely not. But it's fascinating. I kind of agree with if the rumors are true, I kind of agree. Go ahead and upgrade. Try to win this year. J.J. McCarthy can't help you this year. I'd rather have, let's if you're Philadelphia, didn't they have Carson Wentz and they got Nick Foles? Nick Foles delivered them a Super Bowl, and then they made the mistake of moving on, and Carson Wentz went into the toilet. Maybe I'm talking myself out of it. But they got the Super Bowl. Who cares? You got to get the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. You got to get a quarterback that you feel like can win you a Super Bowl this year. Let me move on. Hey, there were some people, Chris Canty and Michelle Beadle, at the top of the list that really went after Jameis Winston and Myles Garrett and were upset about the defense of these two guys. Let's hear from Chris Canty, the ESPN radio host and talent. Let's hear him go after. He defended the fans, or maybe more attacked Jameis Winston and Myles Garrett for making too much of what the fans did. Let's play the clip.
Such a hard conversation for me to have because I feel like the fans in Cleveland were booing because of Deshaun Watson's poor play and happy that he got out of there. So hopefully the team can get better quarterback play. I'm not sure how much the 24 sexual misconduct cases factored into their emotions in that particular moment. But when I hear Myles Garrett and Jameis Winston call for empathy for Deshaun Watson, that's cringe. Where was the empathy for the 24 victims to his sexual misconduct? And then them being forced to relive that trauma after the Cleveland Browns give Deshaun Watson $230 million. Where's your empathy for how they felt in that moment? For how victims of sexual abuse might feel in that moment, seeing somebody being accused of something so despicable be rewarded in that fashion. Mm-hmm. That's the part where the players got to be careful with that line. I mean, LeBron James came out yesterday and talked about how lame it was for the Cleveland fans to boo Watson when he got hurt. Did you come out and talk about how lame it was with Deshaun Watson having 24 sexual misconduct cases? That's where you got to be careful as a player. Mm-hmm. When it comes to issues like this. And I understand wanting to defend your teammate. I understand that bunker mentality. You know, I'm in the foxhole with my guy, and I got to defend my guy. There was nothing wrong with those players coming out and saying it lacks class for the Cleveland Browns fans to boo when Deshaun Watson got hurt. Period, end sentence. Leave it there. For you to go out there and make calls for empathy shows a complete lack of awareness, and something about that has to change. It is completely insensitive, and those players who thought they were doing the right thing could not have been more wrong in that moment with their commentary.
It's not a bad take, and I'm a fan of Chris Canty. It's not a bad take. I don't agree with it, though. The victims of Deshaun Watson chose cash over criminal charges, chose cash. They weren't, hey, I need more empathy. I'm suing for empathy. They sued for cash. That's what they wanted. They didn't want empathy. They wanted cash, and they got it. So, they put a price tag on the suffering that they endured and took the cash and are good. That's where I slightly disagree with Chris Canty. Your thoughts?
I think Canty, for the most part, makes valid points. Look, I don't expect teammates that you're in the trenches with to be thrown under the bus. Look, football is a violent game played by guys who are less than perfect. I've come to that realization long ago. They are not role models, nor they should be. And what they do in their private lives should really be kept private because, quite frankly, the more we know, the less we might like them. That's fine because, for me, they are the weekend's entertainment and what we talk about. But Canty does make a good point. It's one thing to say, hey, look, you guys shouldn't boo or cheer a guy for getting hurt. It is classless. However, he's right. When Jameis Winston acts like this guy is Mandela or Martin Luther King, there is an issue. Like, you are laying it on really thick. He's a football player. And to be fair to the Cleveland fans, the ones that did boo, I believe that they were doing it in the context of, you were a bad quarterback. I don't think it had to do anything with ethics or morals. I really don't. I just think they were expressing their frustration over a very bad football team and a franchise that just can't get it right. And they want better. And guess what? Fans themselves are allowed to have their own self-interest and want their teams to win. So I think Canty, for the most part, pretty much got it right.
Let's hear from Michelle Beadle. I want to hear your reaction to her as well. Here's Michelle Beadle.
The fans think that because they pay their money, they can do or say whatever they want out loud. That's exactly what Deshaun Watson did. Mm-hmm. He did whatever he wanted, and then he paid some money to make a problem go away. I would have cheered my ass off. Here's the problem. I would have been booing Deshaun Watson the minute they brought him to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. The fans were put in a garbage situation. And if you talk to a lot of Browns fans, they don't like him. They never liked him. They hated the move by the organization, and they didn't want to be forced to cheer for this person who they don't find to be a decent human being. I think what the Cleveland Brown players did yesterday was reprehensible. You want to stand by your dude? You can do it with minimal words. What I don't need is you to canonize the guy in front of cameras and microphones and act like we are wrong for not liking him or that we are the world against Deshaun Watson. The way people feel about Deshaun Watson has nothing to do with his Achilles or his play as a quarterback. Yep. It has to do everything with what he has been accused and what he has settled with dozens of women for doing. And that's what we know of.
Steve, your thoughts on that? I get where she's coming from. And I'm not a huge Michelle Beadle fan. I get where she's coming from. But your thought, I need to gather my thoughts. Go ahead.
I mean, she kind of veered off in different ways. I don't know if I agree or vehemently disagree with her. But again, if Deshaun Watson was throwing 45 touchdowns a year and leading the Browns to 13 victories in a Super Bowl run, can we just be honest about it? A lot of fans would excuse anything. And quite frankly, if I was a fan of the Cleveland Browns, I probably would too. Because again, he's not my friend. He's not my neighbor. I don't know him. He's a guy that plays for a football team that I have chosen to cheer for. And if you buy season tickets, financially invest in. And what are these games really? They're entertainment and they are a diversion. And for 3.5, 4 hours a week, if they could take my mind off of real world issues and make my life a little bit better by winning a football game that I have no control over, Jason, how many fans are really going to say, well, yeah, but he did this and he got 18 parking tickets that were unpaid for? Fans are going to be fans. I don't know. There's some of what she said I absolutely agree with. and some of it that I absolutely don't, and I'm kind of mixed up on which. I may probably have to listen to that again, jot down notes.
What I would love to ask Michelle, and I mean this sincerely and not with any snark, is I wonder what her position is on Kobe Bryant. And I know it was just one incident that we know about, but Kobe Bryant has been canonized more than any athlete. Perhaps, in death, he's untouchable. No one can say, and he died tragically. And I get it. I can remember how sad I was, and I was not the hugest Kobe Bryant fan during his playing days. When he died tragically, helicoptering his daughter to a basketball game at that young of an age, and I actually liked Kobe Bryant post-playing career. I liked a lot of the things he was doing, the way he carried himself and represented himself. But man, Kobe Bryant cannot be disparaged in this modern culture. Guys want to fight you over it. It's almost like he spoke against Jesus Christ. And I'm just sorry. At the end of the day, the guy was accused of rape by a 19-year-old girl. So I'd wonder what Michelle's position on Kobe would be. Anyway, go ahead,
Jason.
Steve.
I can honestly say this as a Laker fan in recess, that Kobe's popularity as a Laker, I think, is very close, if not equal, to Magic Johnson. And when Eagle Colorado happened, everyone was horrified. I believe it was after the year when they failed to get the fourth championship. I think it happened after the San Antonio Spurs kind of ended that whole run. But I do remember the next season when they brought in Gary Payton and Karl Malone, I believe. And during the season, if you recall, he'd have to play games and go to a court hearing, then take a private jet to a game. And it's funny, there was not this ethical or moral debate is should a guy on trial for this be playing basketball? And and can we be honest? When he puts up 45 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, nobody was picketing. Nobody was protesting. You know what we were doing as fans, for better or worse? And I'm not making a judgment because I was one of them. I was cheering as a Laker fan. So, again, we have to be honest about these things. Does she have the same outrage? You're right, Jason, for other athletes with similar missteps?
Steve, Bill Belichick yesterday doubled down on his Jerod Mayo take. And man, I think it's crystal clear now. There's some bad blood between Belichick and Jerod Mayo. Belichick developed this guy. I think he feels like Mayo's been a little bit disloyal, and Belichick's just doing a good job being a broadcaster. But here's Bill Belichick talking with Tom Brady and Jim Gray about Jerod Mayo and the slow start and the soft start of the New England Patriots.
Hey, Coach, have you ever had a soft team? Look, I think when you criticize your team publicly like that, it doesn't always go over well. Not every coach has their own style, and maybe sometimes that can be effective and all. But ultimately, I always felt like when the team played bad, that was my responsibility too. I mean, we might have had bad playing, but we had bad coaching that led to bad playing. So I think it's always best to kind of take a look at yourself and do what you can do to help the team, and then. If you have constructive criticism as a coach, that's your job. But I don't know. Last year the Patriots led the league in rushing defense yards per carry, number 1 in the league. This year they're 26th or whatever it is. It's the same players. I don't think that those players on defense are soft, but they haven't stopped the run very well this year.
That's the greatest coach in NFL history calling out Jerod Mayo. He's putting a lot of pressure on Jerod Mayo. There's some bad blood here, Steve.
Jason, there may be, and I don't know, did Bill Belichick not expect or want Mayo to be his replacement? Because it's clear to me that Bill Belichick still wants to coach. And he probably felt like, hey, I've done enough here with the Patriots. I should be able to basically make my own exit on my own terms. Now, with that said, when you go back to the Patriots the last year or two, there's a very particular pattern. They're a very putrid, ineffective offense with no threats, no speed outside. But defensively, they still gave teams a lot of trouble. And look, Bill Belichick is being factual. Last year's defense, much of which the core has come back, is playing a lot worse. So look, Jerod Mayo may be absolutely correct. It's a soft team, but coach, it's the exact same team that was actually pretty good defensively. So I believe Mayo, as a young coach, made a mistake. He was way too honest. And in my view, one lesson he should have taken from Bill Belichick is during the season, say little. In fact, say nothing at all, because sometimes if you're actually honest and blunt, those things can come right back to hurt you.
Look, Belichick, to me, there's a lot of things he'd like to say, and it's probably like, hey, no good deed goes unpunished. I gave a guy a chance, and I think Belichick thinks like Robert Kraft, absolutely insane. It's like, hey, you want to replace me? Fine. But I think Belichick's in there going, with Jerod Mayo? Are you kidding me? This is borderline return. And Jerod Mayo may be a perfectly fine position coach. Might be perfectly fine. But I think Bill Belichick is clearly pointing a finger and saying, this ain't no head coach. This is a crazy decision. You don't blame the players, particularly, again, it's like, look how obvious it was. We stopped the run last year. Same guys are back. And I'm just, no one's making a big enough deal. The Jacksonville Jaguars, 17 straight running plays. That does not that only happens in Little League football. That does not happen at the professional and collegiate level, and particularly 17 straight, and they were all effective.
Jason,
Steve, did you? Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think Mayo was the coordinator, was he? How many guys?
No.
First head coaching job. Yeah, I mean, but how many guys first head coaching job is in the NFL? I mean, there's a thought process in college football. You get a GA, then you become a position coach, you become a coordinator, and then you become a coach at a G4 or a smaller job before you even get to one of the bigger programs in the P4. In the National Football League, it's actually happened where guys have kind of jumped the line. But Jason, I want to ask you this: does this remind you a little bit of the fractured relationship between Bobby Knight and Mike Davis? Because if you remember that, I'm sure you do. Bobby Knight was forced out by, I believe, Miles Brand, and then Mike Davis, his loyal assistant, took the job, and it fractured their relationship forever.
Yes, and Bobby Knight was irate about Mike Davis, a recruiter, a good assistant coach, but I think Bobby Knight was like, this is the guy you're replacing me with? And, I spent several years friends with Mike Davis and was close to the Indiana University program. Mike's temperament was a little bit questionable as a head coach. He snapped in a game against Kentucky and got on the court and kind of it was just over the top. And it's just like, hey, Mike, you do realize they just fired Bobby Knight for this type of behavior, and now you're doing it against Kentucky. And I wrote a piece that was, I wrote a piece that was slightly critical of Mike Davis. He's never spoken to me since. And I like Mike Davis. But he snapped against Kentucky, and again, he didn't understand. It's like, I think everybody understands me. It's like, dude, we're friends, but if I'm covering you, I'm going to say what I think.
Well, Jason,
regardless. Cost me a friendship with Mike Davis, and he won some games at some other schools and had other opportunities, but I don't think his temperament was built to be a head coach.
Jason, didn't Mike Davis lead Indiana to the Final Four? I remember one year they beat, I think, the top-seeded Duke team in the round of 16.
Yeah.
And I think that was the year where they had Jared Jeffries. So let's see if Jerod Mayo can even ever make an AFC championship game if he lasts that long, because I'm reading on Twitter certain things. There's already reports that Mayo, that seat is getting warm. Jason, we're 7 or 8 games into the National Football League season, and that seat's already getting warm. That's pretty alarming as far as I'm concerned.
Very alarming. Steve, finally, have a little fun with this or end on a tiny bit of a lighter note. Antonio Brown has made peace, it appears, with Tom Brady. I'm not sure about releasing audio of the piece or whatever, but I do want your take on AB here. Let's watch or listen to the video. Antonio Brown apologizes to Tom Brady.
I started a little CTS ESPN, a little podcast. I talked to Cheetah, just talked to them people about some of their traumas and how, you know, the older we get, we still stuck with our traumas for our kids and like seeking therapy and how to deal with traumas because, you know, we just human beings and a product of what we go through and how people treated us. So that's how I've been trying to do. Yeah. I still gotta, you know, making a little bit of music, but I just kind of just focus on raising the kids and try to do some positive stuff. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, man. Fuck, we're all dealing with something. Life is like, no matter who you are, we all have our stuff we're dealing with. You know, it's
never perfect, right?
Parents and we're sons, and we had all our stuff growing up, and then things that happened in elementary school and high school, and they all shape who we are. And it's not all roses for everybody. And I know what you went through, you know, a lot as a kid, and you know, your story through high school wasn't easy. You know what I mean? And you made a lot of great choices, and you made some things that were tough, but you know, hopefully you can overcome them. And you can,
yes, sir.
You know, everyone wants to see. You know, I just wanted you to succeed, man. I hope you always know that. I always wanted to see you succeed. That's all.
Man, you helped me succeed, man. You came and got me in the dirt, champ. Helped me be a championship, man. Be a part of greatness. Witness you be just so great as a leader, man, as a person. So I never took any of those things for granted, man. You always special to me. No matter the emotions I tried to portray, man, I only got respect for you and everything you did for me, man. So I always, you know what I mean? I couldn't live on without, you know what I mean? Just letting you know as a man, you know what I'm saying? I got nothing but the utmost respect for you and just asking for your forgiveness, man. You know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. You know, look, what's happened in the past is in the past. So, you know, whatever. And hopefully I get to see you at some point and give you a hug.
Man, I love to see you, man. Just whenever you got time, whenever you free, champ, just let me know. One call away, man.
Yeah, same here. Same here. You know that.
A great look for Tom Brady, in my opinion. A very good look for Antonio Brown. I'm not sure about releasing this or whatever, but one thing I have to say is AB is remaking his image. He's becoming a very likable person, and I can't, you know, from his Trump support to his self-deprecating humor to his cracker of the day deal, I think people are rethinking how they feel about AB, and I gotta salute him. I'm not 100% on board with releasing this, but I think if you understand AB, everything's content to AB. Everything's.
Let me just. It feels like a photo op. It feels like a planned thing when it's recorded. Did Tom know it was being recorded? You know, like, why record it? Why not? If you're truly,
that's AB.
If you're truly there to really settle something, it's not made as another stunt. He's got a little. I mean, as much, you know him and you've interviewed him. My only point is, I want to like this guy and I want to believe it. Feels a little like Mike Tyson, you know, coming back. You know, sort of like the way Tyson.
People like Mike Tyson.
I know now they do. It feels a little bit of that redemption where Mike Tyson is adored now. Early on, he was like a nut bucket.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I heard after that he named Tom Brady the all-time greatest cracker of the day. Jason, you need to bring him back. I mean, no, he wasn't a Patriot for long. I think about 10 days. He's becoming an all-time great American Patriot. I mean, registering people to vote. I mean, what do they say now? Rock the vote. That's great. I believe, hopefully he'll be on the right side of history. And look, he is more likable. I hope that he stays on a very good, lawful path towards redemption. I find him to be hilarious. I love retweeting him because it angers certain people. And to that I say, deal with it. I'm going to keep retweeting him. But Jason, seriously, I would love to see you have a panel with him, Charleston White, and Anton Daniels, the fearsome foursome. Put that on pay-per-view. Be great television. Yes.
I may try to do that. Particularly in my home studio. Steve, thank you. Great job as always. We'll see you tomorrow. I got to reach out to AB. Because he's turning the corner. And again, you just got to know who AB is. Everything's content. Anything you say to AB is on the record. You got to remember, this all started when he did a Facebook Live inside the Steelers locker room after losing the game or playing. I can't remember, did they win or lose the game, but it was a playoff game or whatever. That's AB. But he's becoming a very likable figure, and it goes beyond his support for Trump. He's self-deprecating, and I think he's genuine in the moment. Can he sustain all the things that he wants to do? That's questionable. That's questionable for all of us. I have the same issue, but I do like AB. So anyway, stay tuned. We're going to have a little Tennessee harmony with Anthony, Virgil, and Kevin. X.
Hey, look, let me say this. We have to stop. We have to stop. As the media and everybody else shining the light on Bronny, because it's other players that are deserve our attention, right? The lottery guys, the guys that are actually that are going to get drafted in the first round. Like, we're talking about a guy, a young man, that's possibly going to go late second round or not getting drafted at all. I've never, in my 4 years of working here, I've never sat on the table where we're talking about a second-round pick.
But this is LeBron James' son, and that is a legitimate storyline that one of the greatest of all times has a son trying to play in the NBA at the same time.
And you have to give Bronny credit for actually trying to say the right thing.
Nobody in America cares that Bronny James played 3 minutes and grabbed 1 rebound, and at 11 o'clock at night in the opener, and this is supposed to be a moment that America is going to resonate with. I mean, come on. I'm being serious now. And I love the kid. All right. We know we had the major issue at USC. And LeBron's great. He's an all-timer. He's always been a phenomenal player. He stays out of trouble. Who doesn't like LeBron? I mean, he's not Jordan, but who doesn't love LeBron? Everybody loves LeBron.
I can't
But to make a big deal because JJ, and I love Redick. I'm rooting for him hard here.
Yeah, me
But
too.
the idea that he put him in for 3 minutes, he grabbed the rebound, a couple of shots, and this is the greatest moment in professional sports.
Mad
I mean, we
Dog.
got to be serious.
They
This is-
made history.
Well,
It's
Ken Griffey
LeBron
Jr.
James.
and Ken Griffey
Yeah,
Jr.
but in
and
the
Ken Griffey
NBA,
made history.
he's one of the greatest players of all time. The ultimate dream realized, playing alongside his son in the iconic purple and gold.
All right, welcome back. Anthony, Virgil. Does it say TJ Moe or should it say, no, Kevin Donahue? I was like, is TJ Moe about to join us here? Anthony, Virgil, Kevin Donahue. Time for a little Tennessee harmony. Anthony, pray us in.
Father God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for the opportunity to share your word. Help us to let your word guide us each and every day, our conversation, our walk, our conduct, that we bring glory to you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We're going to start with Pastor Jamal Bryant. I want to play a clip of Jamal Bryant. I believe Jamal's out of Virgil's neck of the woods down in Atlanta. Am I correct on that, Virgil? I think Virgil personally mentored Jamal Bryant, is my understanding.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, you know, that's very good on you for being that kind of discipling young ministers like Jamal Bryant. Feather in your cap, Virgil. Here's Jamal Bryant talking about why men, black men in particular, should support Kamala Harris. Let's play the clip.
You said something is wrong with brothers who don't know how to support a sister.
Yeah. Full stop.
And Mordecai was man enough to know that in order for me to be a man, I got to know how to support a woman. Something is wrong with brothers who don't know how to support a sister. It was a sister that raised you. It was a sister that taught you how to read. It was a sister that taught you how to bathe yourself.
In the context of the vice president, were you trying to send a message?
We've got to be able to vote that misogyny is still real in our community. We've got to address it head on and not act like it doesn't exist. The reality is if black men had voted, Stacey Abrams would be a governor. And so I think that we've got to do some real redress that after racism, the biggest ill in America is sexism. And I think it's part of the responsibility of this generation to deal with it head on.
Virgil, I'm going to have you start there, that the biggest ills in America start with racism and then it's misogyny. Is that biblically sound coming from a minister?
No, this is absolutely ludicrous. I can't believe that the word misogyny is even coming out of the lips of Jamal Bryant, given his history, that I won't even spend the time diving into his colorful past. Those who are unfamiliar with it can Google it. The ways that he's dishonored his vows to his spouse. Really, he should be taking the word of God and using it as a mirror to transform his own life, heart, and mind. Again, the idea that we're going to placate to issues of race as it pertains to Kamala Harris. These men are pulpit pimps and sellouts. That's exactly what they are. They have no thought process about biblical truth. Jamal Bryant is not a pastor, and New Birth Missionary Baptist is not a church. It is an unofficial outpost for the Democratic National Convention. They need to roll up whatever they're doing there and throw it away. It's no longer a church. The lampstand has absolutely been removed. Jamal Bryant has called himself a pro-choice pastor. He calls himself wanting to have members who smell like weed, so for the purpose of having church members work out on the land of the church so that they can farm cannabis. This guy is an absolute joke. He's not a pastor.
Anthony, I'm going to ask you a different question in terms of he's saying that we have to know how to support women, and he's talking about black. And so the question comes down to, well, what is support? And is it voting them into power? Is that the support they need? Or is it leadership and discipleship and marriage and a man in the home that's following God? Is that the support they need? That's where define support for me, and how would a minister preach to a congregation about how can men support women?
So his definition of support is obviously voting and encouraging whatever women want to do. Biblically, to support a woman would be to encourage her to be what God has designed and purposed for her to be. And that would be the same in supporting a man. He uses the phrase, in order to be a real man, you got to know how to support a woman. Well, that's not biblically accurate. Biblically, to be a man, if you understand when God created Adam, that was before Eve was even on the scene. He had a relationship with Adam. Adam had a relationship with him. He had a purpose. He had a job, tend to the garden. He had responsibility. So all of this came before Eve is even there. That's being a man. And so even as I encourage and disciple young men myself, you got to know who you are in Christ before a woman even comes on the scene, so that you understand God's design for his creation. So then when we look at, okay, well, what has God purposed man to do? What has God purposed woman to do? And how do they work together? It is primarily through the avenue of marriage that men and women work together to extend God's rule and reign in his creation through discipleship, through obedience and discipleship. By one way, obviously, procreating, making new disciples, but also in discipling other young people through this union of marriage. Jesus describes his work as a marriage. The Bible opens up with a marriage. It closes with a marriage. Paul tells us, husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church. I've got to look at all of this to see. We fall into trouble when we just want to support women in whatever they do. I go back to the garden and then I'll pass it back to you. Eve had a desire implanted in her by listening to the enemy. Hey, eat this fruit that you're forbidden to eat. And the text says she saw it and it looked good for food. And then the next thing the text says is that she gave some to her husband with her. By Bryant's definition of supporting a woman, Adam was supporting her. Hey, this is what you want to do. It's contrary to what God has told us to do. We're literally going against the will and way of God. But if that's what you'd like to do, I will even be an active participant with you. That's why we're in the situation we're in the world. So yeah, that's the support dynamic for you.
I'm going to circle back to you, but I want to bring Kevin in. Kevin, you grew up in the Catholic Church. Does this type of preaching, is this commonplace in the Catholic Church?
No, this is subversion. I love what both Virgil and Anthony said. This is classic subversion and localized propaganda. What he's doing is he's taking something that's like what Anthony just described perfectly, is from micro, which is, hey, we are to support women. We're to love and support everyone. But he's making it macro. He's trying to say, hey, this stranger, I don't know Kamala from anyone else. You should support her. And if you don't, that's misogyny. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's what Virgil said is he's being a pimp. This is shameful. He's just trying to pimp out the Democratic Party because it's election season. And he's using, sort of classic old school pastor techniques to get the crowd riled up. But it is, for me, it's just subversion. He has taken the micro, which is a beautiful thing. We should love our women. We should marry. We should lead them. We should protect them and provide to them. And he's making it macro just for the purposes of propaganda and for political gain.
Anthony, what he did in this conversation and your response takes me back to thoughts I've expressed before on this show to you and Bobby Harrington when he was on here. And again, I know I have failed personally in this personally, but you just articulated everything that I believe. Like, churches should be marriage factories. That there's nothing, again, if we really wanted to support women, most of the messaging or a great deal of the messaging from a church would be explaining the benefits and why God wants you to be married. And that's one thing. I'm not blaming the church I grew up in, but that's not a message I heard stressed at the church I grew up in. And I don't hear it from a lot of churches, the importance of marriage, and that's where we're failing.
Well, if you don't do that, you cripple the church, the growth of the church, the progression and extension of what God has designed mankind for. We're giving him glory through our marriage. We're giving him glory and extending his dominion through the family. So yeah, I agree with you. A great deal of our preaching must hinge on that. But if we're hinging it on, even in a marriage context, I love and support my wife, but both of us are still beholden to the will and the way of God. So if she's out of order, I have to be the man, the husband, the leader in the house and say, hey, I love you, but that's wrong. We can't do this, or we can't go in this direction. And that keeps everything godly. But what happens is, and this is the crazy part, Jamal is positioning all men, in particular black men, if you don't support her, not because of her policy, but just supporting her because she's a woman, you have to check to see if you're even a real man. Well, I'm a real man based on what God has made me to be. That had nothing to do with a woman per se to make me a man. No, I'm a man created by God. And that's where I find out, what's the direction you have for me as a man, God? What's the direction that I must lead my family in, not just because she's a woman?
Virgil, your passion and slight frustration, anger, I think is well placed because I think you're hearing this as like, holy cow, this guy's got a pretty decent following. His message will go viral and reach even more people. And he's actually poisoning the mind of women and men and pitting basically black men and black women against each other. He's telling black women, if this man don't support whatever you want to do, he's misogynist. And he's telling black men, the greatest thing you can do is support anything a woman wants to do. He is actually our mortal enemy, and I understand why you're so frustrated.
It's angering because, as you mentioned, I'm here in Atlanta, and unfortunately, I have because of the fact that we're in a swing state, I have a front row seat to this absolute chaos and catastrophe that they call Christianity, particularly the black church here in Atlanta. It is rife with this kind of insane propaganda from Democratic Party politics. As we watch Kamala Harris stroll into venues like New Birth, when just moments before, the day before, Christ couldn't even be mentioned at one of her political rallies, and she told those folks that they were at the wrong rally. And then the following day, she shows up at New Birth with Jamal Bryant excoriating black men, telling them that they're misogynistic if they don't vote for her. This is the same woman who wants to promote policies that will further decimate black communities in so many economic ways. Not to mention the fact that we're talking about a genocide as it pertains to the issue of abortion. So if I sound angry, I am angry. These men should be out of the pulpit. They should no longer be doing what they're doing. I completely agree with Anthony, especially when he mentioned the fact that, if we support women, we would be supporting Eve to do what she did. That's exactly what Jamal Bryant did when Roe v. Wade was overturned. Once the Dobbs decision took place, he stepped in the pulpit the very next day and said, we need to support women, and declared himself to be a pro-choice pastor. This guy is not serving the God of the Bible. He's serving the God himself, and he's bowed the knee to Baal. That's exactly what he's doing. Those people need to get out of that church before further condemnation results.
Virgil, just expound a little bit on bow the knee to Baal. Why do you say that?
It's all about child sacrifice at their church. It's all about the promotion of pro-choice policies. It's all about the promotion of ending the life of human beings in the womb. And if there's anything that we should be outraged by, it's a pastor who should be preaching about life and life eternal, that in turn promotes the idea that we should abandon the protection of children in the womb and promote their genocide. That should anger us all.
What Virgil just talked about is so important, and it connects to, all the messaging to black men. Destroy your seed. Mm-hmm. Be on board with that. The approach, it promotes an irresponsibility, and it convicts me on just multiple levels in terms of, I walked around for many years. The key to happiness, the key to life is no responsibility. And I lived that life and made decisions based on that. And I was basically retarded. My thoughts were retarded. And I'm not going to blame Jamal Bryant. I'm not going to blame the church. I'm going to blame my own ignorance. But I see so many men going along with this mentality that there's some sort of value in it for us to destroy our own seed. And to have women, because now you're also dealing with women who are traumatized and damaged because they've had abortions, because of the pressure we put them under, and we're dealing with so many damaged women, and we forced the damage because we bought into a very ignorant, perverse mindset, immoral mindset. Kevin, I want to move on after this.
It's classic wolf in sheep's clothing. The problem with, you just mentioned he's the enemy, right? This is the enemy. The enemy doesn't come looking like, with horns, and, doesn't come looking like Satan. I've always told people, when Satan comes, he'll come looking like Jesus, sounding like Jesus, coming in through the church, right? Satan is sneaky. It's deception. And it's subversion. And so that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a wolf in sheep's clothing using the pulpit to preach a false message. And this is our enemy. And we need to speak up against this. I love what Virgil's saying. I mean, this is a serious, they're worshiping Baal. They're worshiping Satan at that altar.
Does supporting women here mean trans women too?
With Virgil situated in Atlanta, he sees a lot of that. And who knows, Jamal Bryant. I think Jamal Bryant, I saw some minister, it wasn't Jamal Bryant, but I saw some minister basically calling something godly that was ungodly. Didn't I see that on your Twitter feed, Virgil?
Perhaps.
Maybe it was Daryl. Yeah. Let me move on, though. There's one other thing that interests me that I wanted you all's opinion on. Benjamin Watson, former NFL tight end, kind of well-known player, and he has a Christian brand and identity, and he's a believer. He's really outspoken on the pro-life movement, on the right side of that argument. But he says a number of things that from time to time bother me because I think he's got some racial idolatry issues. And this doesn't fall into racial idolatry, but he and Delano were going back and forth a little bit yesterday over Kamala Harris. And Benjamin Watson was explaining that Kamala Harris isn't black and got into a back and forth with Delano where he said that if it were Raphael Warnock, he'd have a different position because he is authentically black. And then at one point, Ben listed his black bona fides is the only way I could say. He defined his blackness by tweeting out, "How does a vote for VP Harris honor my family? My mother and father were born into Jim Crow. My mother's father had to flee his hometown because of death threats because he swam in the whites-only pool. My father's father worked on the naval base for our country, but couldn't even use the same bathroom that Nazi POWs had the privilege of using. My ancestors went from cargo to chattel to freedmen, and my kids inherit that legacy. I respect my fellow Americans' right to vote for the candidate of their choosing. I respect Kamala Harris's ethnic background and her family's immigration story, but the she's black, so we must vote for her narrative has to stop. She ain't that, and that's perfectly okay." So I like his conclusion, like, hey, we ain't got to vote for Kamala Harris, but it's his definition of what black is, and it's subtle, it's insinuated, it's inferred, it's not spoken directly. I asked him a question over Twitter about this, and I know he would say, well, yeah, black is more than this, but as black people, we too often, in my opinion, when we want to say, hey, I'm black, we go to, look at all this bad stuff that happened to my ancestors, and I inherit everything that happened to my ancestors, and that's what real blackness is. It's what white people did to you determines whether or not you're black, and this is all, my kids inherit this legacy. And I'm like, whoa, this is a Christian. Your kids inherit Jesus Christ and his sacrifice and his salvation and his grace and mercy, and your ancestors, I would tend to think, did a lot more than suffer mistreatment from white people. And when I think about my father, who, had some pretty ugly stories about what happened to him. He's a child at a baseball game. He's just a child, and he's taking a leak, and a white guy spit on him. And it scarred my father. But when I think of my father, I think about so many other great things that he did, that's not what's first in my mind, but we keep transferring that. I think of all that my father didn't know his father. My father didn't graduate from high school, but man, he built his own business. He married my mother, had 2 sons, was involved with his 2 sons. And throughout the course of his 76 years on life, he built a home, he built a business, he took care of his kids. He was 0 for 3 at marriage, but he tried. Give him credit for that. But there's all these great things that my father, and he passed on so much wisdom to me and my brother. That's what I think about, not, hey, he was mistreated here and he was mistreated there. And, you know, I take the whole story of him at Chrysler when someone complained about him reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and he was like, well, man, I'm going to start my own business. No one's going to tell me what I can read, blah, blah, blah. That's what I inherited from my father, that spirit of like, man, I'm going to think what I think, want what I want, do what I want to do, and damn what anybody else thinks about it. That's what I inherited. Anyway, Virgil, I know, we'll start with you. I know you got a bit of a history with Ben Watson. Am I right or wrong for being a tiny bit bothered by this?
No, you're spot on. I do have a history with Ben Watson. He's no fan of mine, and likewise, I bring out my Bible bully label name tag whenever I think about Benjamin Watson. And the reason is even in the tweet that he expressed, there's this hypocrisy that's happening. One is he thinks of blackness, includes Kamala Harris in the blackness from a standpoint of her immigrant status and his poor treatment as a black man, or historic treatment of black people all together in the same kit and caboodle. It's doublespeak. This is the same man you mentioned earlier who built his platform on A, being a Christian, and B, being pro-life. But he's saying he's going to honor his family's legacy by voting for someone who is going to promote the killing of the next generation. How is that some impactful or powerful way to?
1 second. Hold on. Let's be clear. I'm pretty sure he's indicating he's not voting for Kamala Harris.
Okay, is that what he said? Is that what he's saying?
His inference is, I'm not Kamala Harris. He's basically saying she's not black. She hadn't suffered all the things that me and my family did.
That's helpful.
You know, how does voting for her honor my ancestors? Anyway,
that's helpful.
That's his
I stand
point.
correct. I stand corrected. Have no problem walking that back at all. Simply said, I think this idea of victimhood, I'll stay there, as it relates to being blackness, as it relates to being black, has everything to do with this victimology narrative that we've embraced, and unfortunately, historically speaking, that Benjamin Watson has embraced as it relates to what it means to be black. That's problematic. It's something we've got to get past. It's a hat tip to the racial idolatry that I still believe that he holds on to, and it's something that men at his level, men who have the platform that he does, who's overcome as much as he has, who's been as successful as he has, needs to abandon altogether.
Nobody else does this, in my view. Hey, here's what I suffered, and that defines me. And as Christians, I think, you know, what defines is Jesus Christ, and we're triumphant, we're victorious. The ending's been written. We know we're winners. And so we'd be better off pointing to our victories, no?
Well, when you look at the biblical narrative, I think about the exodus of Israel from Egyptian captivity. For years after they had been delivered into Canaan, they sang about, they referred to what God had delivered them through in the wilderness for 40 years, losing a generation because of disobedience, the slavery that they had endured. That was one of the reasons why they cried out to God in Exodus chapter 1, was the oppression that they had. I use that to say this. I could look at my family in a similar way that Ben has looked at his family. This relative has gone through this ancestor has gone through this, grandfather this, grandmother. I can look at that. What has been my case, though, is that the only way they overcame those things was their faith, right? Like I look at what my grandmother went through, and she's teaching me not from a standpoint of this is what happens to black people and this is what you need to learn, but rather I overcame this by the power of Jesus. And so now any suffering dynamic, the response to that is the power of Jesus and the gospel of Christ. The only issue is sometimes we only see suffering through the lens of race or through the lens of what happens to us physically, but we negate the fact that a lot of our suffering originates from our sinfulness. even the whole slavery dynamic in America, even the slavery dynamic in so many parts of the world now, even here, different types, its origin is sin. And the antidote to that, the cure to that, is the power of Christ and the blood of Jesus Christ. I looked at it and I saw it initially that he was basically going a long way around to come to his conclusion as to why not vote for Kamala, because there is a narrative over, well, she's black and we should support her because she's black. But then, I don't know, this whole thing gets confusing to me because on the one hand, we jump on, Rachel Dolezal for being a white lady who portrayed herself as black, but now we have Kamala who, I don't know, she's black by association, and so we must support her based off of that.
I think it's her white husband that makes her black.
Okay, so
I think that's her.
That's like, and I'm saying it just keeps shifting. Even in our last topic that we were talking about, on the one hand is, hey, to be a real man, you got to support women, but do we know what a woman is in 2024? And does that include trans women? And we just get so convoluted with all of these narratives, which is why. Man, we got to get back to the word. All of this stuff is going to cloud our vision and cloud the mission that God has us to do to lead others to Christ.
As a Christian, and Kevin, you hop in, why wouldn't we just be making the decisions based on do the policies make it easier for us to be Christians?
Yeah, as we should.
Rather than basing it on someone's skin color or did their family have the right amount of suffering?
Well, this is the Rachel Dolezal is a result of the Victimhood Olympics that we all play, right? Like she's trying to cash in on the Victimhood Olympic Games. And in this context, I like what he's saying. He's basically, talking about the history of black people in America and saying that Kamala doesn't fit into this history. Regardless of what you think, regardless of her policy, she's not one of us. So in this case, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with him drawing that context for that conclusion. So, for example, if someone were to be claiming to be Irish Catholic, right? And we say, well, no, listen, here's the history of the Irish in America. There was the potato famine. These Catholic Irish men came over here as immigrants, built up themselves, all this stuff. Yes, there was discrimination, but this person isn't that, right? So in this case, I don't disagree with him using this context to create this conclusion. But to go back to what you were saying, yeah, we should be looking at this through a Christian and a moral perspective to say, who do we vote for? But in this case, I'm okay with it.
Here's where I disagree. It's just, we've reduced our life to suffering, and it's not accurate. Take my mother and my father, but my mother's still alive, and I still talk to her about this. And my mother is a Democrat. But she's honest enough to say, hey, I'm 85. I've seen a lot. I love the way I grew up. She grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and when they went to go buy clothes, they couldn't try them on. They could not try them on. They just had to buy them, and you had to know your size, and you'd take it back, maybe if they would. And she said there would be trouble trying to even take it back. She faced legitimate discrimination. I love the way I grew up. Oh, my neighborhood was so awesome. Everybody knew each other and we were safe. We didn't have to lock our doors. Blah, blah. Oh, I would do it all again. I'm glad I'm not growing up now. This is the stuff my mother says. And she faced this. Her mother got chased out of Kentucky by the KKK. If you talk to my grandmother, oh God, I love, then childhood things bad happened. Her falling into faith helped her get over the animus and all that other stuff. But we act like that my mother and previous generations, everything was the worst on the planet. They just walked around saying, oh, white people don't like us and I can't do this and I can't. And literally my mother was like, it was better when I was growing up than it is now. And she's not crazy. She's not saying that to be provocative. She looks at what's going on now, and she looks at again, I don't want to go all into my family business or whatever, but neighborhoods are really unsafe. You know, my mother, you know, thanks to me and my brother, and thanks to God mostly, lives in a very nice community and all that, but we still got family members in neighborhoods that are not safe. And it's like my mother's memory, that ain't the way it was when we grew up. You know, and so that's what bothers. We have so much to be thankful for, but we spend so much time talking about what we suffered or others suffered before us. That's all exaggerated, in my opinion. Because, and again, everybody knows me and my history and dating history. Heck, I like country music. I wish I had grew up when my mother grew up. I really do. And that's not because I have some problem with white people. I just think it was better then. It seemed like, I just, when I say make America great again, you can take me back to the 1940s and I'll be just fine. Because I grew up at the Masterpiece Lounge. It wasn't nothing but working class black people, and I loved it. It was awesome. But anyway, go ahead.
My question was going to be, when did she ever use her stories, or your grandmother, whoever else, did they ever use their stories of what they went through as a means to raise the bar of expectation for you?
Let me answer it this way. My grandmother told the story about the KKK coming to lynch her father as a story to tell us what the power of Jesus Christ and how much hatred she had for white people after experiencing that, and that Jesus Christ took all that away from her.
That's great.
Heard that story repeatedly.
Yeah.
Name was Mama Lovey. There's no one that ever met her that was like, holy cow, this woman is filled with the Holy Spirit and everything else that God has to offer. She had all the fruit. And that was her number one story. Like, man, I hated white people. And then Jesus Christ stepped into my life, and I ain't never looked back.
That's it.
So in terms of holding us to a higher bar, I do take my father for sure. And my mother's like, ain't no excuses here, buddy. You know, you ain't gone through nothing. You know, my father didn't have shoes. Didn't know his father. Didn't get along great with his mother. My grandmother. My grandmother, I think, dated a man that may have sexually molested my aunt, and grew up in a lot of dysfunction. And he looked at me and my brother and was like, man, even when me and my father's in a 400 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment, like, woo, this is a lot better than what I had coming up. So, that was, it's like, I learned that lesson when I tried to quit the football team at Ball State. They were like, you're on your own, buddy. Good luck. But anyway, gentlemen, Virgil, I'll give you the final thought.
No, I think it's spot on. It takes all the way back. Even the stories that you told. I love the fact that you're the relative that you mentioned points back to the power of Christ. It goes back to something that Anthony laid out earlier, which is, at the end of the day, we've got to go back to Scripture. That's what's going to solve this. And again, I'm on the front line of this chaos and craziness right now here in Atlanta, watching it all unfold. And even this conversation has been helpful to me to remind me that at the end of the day, while we watch things shake here as the election is taking place, we need to plant our feet firmly in the Word of God so that we remain stable.
All right, gentlemen, gotta go. I gotta get to Shemeka, find out what the chat's been talking about. Thank you, Shemeka Michelle. X.
Don't look at it as pressure, because like a Boston media member or somebody expecting me to win, like they don't have a weapon, like they're not gonna like come after me if we don't win. Like they're saying words, so like they don't mean anything. They're just words.
This is what coaches tell players and say inside locker rooms all the time. All the time in private. That's the type of messaging coaches give players. It bothers me that then they get in front of the media and act like, oh my God, someone's a victim and those words, and I can't believe they said that. I wish everybody was as authentic and as transparent and as honest and as smart as Joe Mazzulla that whole rant, very impressive. It reflects my entire mentality. I couldn't care less what someone said to me, called me. It's just some words. I define who I am. All right, welcome back. Shemeka, I woke up this morning and I told you all how terrible I was feeling. I was like, we're going to do an hour show. Here we are 2 hours later. Shemeka, welcome. What's popping in the... Hey, Shemeka, you got the... I don't know if you watched the NBA last night, but I think D'Angelo Russell was wearing that same hat last night during the game.
Really?
That you have. I thought there was a WNBA player out there. But anyway... here we are 2 hours later. The show's wrapping up. What was popping in the chat?
So, Jason, we have a funny question for you, 2 super chats, and then I'd like to address Simone Biles and a person in the chat that thought I was going to have an emotional back and forth with a man I'm not sleeping with. So that's what we have going on today.
Perfect.
All right. So, Taco the Great says, Shemeka, please ask Jason if LeBron's hairline is the greatest comeback of his career.
It is, and I'm sure he paid a lot of money for it. It was a good investment. It's like his hairline is improved, but there's something about at the very top he can't do anything about. But good investment by LeBron. I ain't mad at you. People thought for a long time I had a lace front. I don't. I occasionally dye my hair, although it's been like 6 months since the last time I did it. But yeah, I got good hair. But Butter's been very impressed with my hair.
You got good lettuce.
Yeah, I got good hair. Anyway, next.
Joseph Morrison, thanks for the super chat, says Mark Schillerith, I don't know how you pronounce that,
Mark Schlereth.
Has always spoken highly of you. How come you don't have him on the show more often? You guys have similar opinions.
I love Mark Schlereth. He came to Roll Call. We've had him on the show. He's got his own morning show on FS1. Look, I love Mark. I don't have him on that often because I try to keep these guys that, I try to keep them out of harm's way. I don't, they catch a lot of heat. Someone will hop in their DMs. Oh, I can't believe he's talking to Jason Whitlock. Oh. So I just, I don't want people getting mad at him because a lot of, female hosts or whatever, or I don't know, somebody in the Alphabet Mafia may be working with him, and the next thing you know, what you doing associating with Jason Whitlock? Don't you know he's terrible? So anyway, but I love Mark Schlereth, smart guy, great family. I don't know how he got that wife that he has, being as ugly as he is. But anyway, Mark Schlereth, one of my favorite people. Next.
Another one, super chat, thank you. Says, did you see that Charles Barkley has LeBron ranked 11 all time, but yet he spent years trashing Skip Bayless for hating on LeBron, and Skip has LeBron ranked higher than Barkley does. Make it make sense.
Whoa, I got to see this list. Do we have proof of that? If so, we may talk about that tomorrow. Look, I think LeBron's one of the 5 or 6 greatest players in the NBA, but what Charles is probably arguing is like, man, LeBron's pretty unskilled. He's bigger and stronger than everybody else, but he's unskilled. He's Angel Reese with a jump shot. How about that? He's just bigger and more athletic, but LeBron doesn't have a shot. He doesn't, it was like Kareem had the sky hook. Obviously, Larry Bird had the jumper. Michael Jordan developed the greatest post-up game and, mid-range game and just, taking guys one-on-one. LeBron bulldozes people, I think, going to his left mostly, and he has a little three-point shot that occasionally gets hot. But I think LeBron's got the most dunks in NBA history. And so I don't have a real – I'd have to see the list but it's not indefensible. It's not something I agree with, but it's not indefensible. Next.
All right, now to Simone Biles. Loki Joker was going back and forth with me in the chat, or thought he was. I kept saying I'll be on the mic in a minute. But this one statement, Shemeka, okay, soft as cottonelle. Simone quit and quitters quit. LOL. I'll leave that there. So because I'm here, I'm going to leave this here. Now, I don't have a problem with y'all being sexist. I let y'all be sexist, and a lot of times I laugh. But I do want to make sure that we're dealing in facts, because that's what we do here on this show. Now, when Simone quit in 2020, it is documented that she had the twisties. The twisties is a phenomenon in gymnastics where a gymnast loses their sense of body control and awareness of where they are in space while in the air. It can happen when a gymnast is attempting a high-level skill and can lead to serious injury or paralysis. Now, this is a psychological issue, and I think it would have been helpful when they said mental health, if they would have put a name on it, because it's only called the twisties in gymnastics. It's called the yips in every other, in other sports. So I don't mind, because it's a psychological issue if people want to discredit it. But if you're going to discredit it across the board. If you're going to discredit it in gymnastics, discredit it in the NFL. If you're going to discredit it in gymnastics, discredit it in tennis and golf and every other place that is documented. Let's make sure we're dealing in facts and being fair. So if we're going to do this, let's just do it for everybody. So if you don't believe it's a psychological thing and it's being weak and it's being, girly or whatever, then you have to do that for the NFL as well, because we're not going to box me in the chat and then dick ride somebody like Royce when he talks about mental health. So I just want to make sure we're clear.
Did Shemeka just scold me? I think that's the first time in Fearless history that Shemeka has chosen to scold me.
It felt real.
Yeah, it did. And
real.
To do that after we just exposed Jamal Bryant and all these preachers that are telling you women to get out of line, I can't believe you chose to come on here and scold me over Simone Biles. I got to think. I don't even have a response to that. I got to think about that.
I got one. I got the twisties a couple times leaving losers last week. Does that count? I get the twisties all the time.
Myself. Yeah. If we count that, then I've had them myself then, Butter.
People hit me in the email, hit me in the chat. What do y'all think about Shemeka scolding me? And do we need to perhaps make Shemeka a candidate for the Butter Box?
Oh.
We'll tune in tomorrow as we launch this investigation into Your Vote Matters. Send me an email at fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com or hop in the chats in the comments below. Should Shemeka be a candidate for the Butter Box tomorrow after scolding me on my own show? That's it. That's all for us today. Play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I just want, I wanna be. I just want, I wanna be. I just want.